Welcome to Consulting Uncensored, the podcast that pulls back the curtain on the good, the bad, and the ugly of the consulting world. This is where real conversations happen about leadership, strategy, culture, and careers in consulting. Hosted by industry veteran Neal McNamara, each episode features candid discussions with consultants, executives, and firm leaders who are building, challenging, and reshaping the industry from the inside. No filters, no fluff, just honest insight into what actually works and what needs to change. This is Consulting Uncensored. Here's Neal.
Over the past 3 years, I've been presenting at numerous conferences where investment banks bring together leaders in the consulting industry with private equity investors that have an investment thesis for professional services. My firm recently participated in 2 of these. Shout out to Stifel and Clearsight Advisors for hosting. And here are some hot off the presses observations, insights, and feedback from some of the top investors in our space. First point is, deal activity in private equity is picking up a bit, but it's still nowhere near the levels that we were all hoping it would be at this point. Opinions are still widely diverse, I would say, on what 2026 is going to look like. You have folks that believe that it's going to be another terrible year for deal activity in the middle market. You have some that think it's going to be a blockbuster year, and a number that fall out somewhere in between. For what it's worth, I'm in the camp of falling out somewhere in between. That said, there are a number of firms that did one or none on platform acquisitions last year, and they're already getting LOIs signed, deals are getting closed in Q1, so there is improvement. Scaling the business development function in professional services is really hard. For non-commoditized services in the consulting industry, the sales process is highly complex. There are so many layers of relationships you have to have in an organization, such as a private equity fund, to sell your work. Here's one example from our own business to illustrate this point. Private equity firms, broadly speaking, are our core customers. And just to get an opportunity to propose on a project, we might need to know 15, 30 different people just to get that at-bat. It could be an MD on the investment team. It could be a VP on the investment team. It could be an operating partner. It could even be the CFO of the platform that's involved here. And that's just to bid on the project. Once you get to actually winning the project, you might have 3 different groupings of people. Again, it could be investment team. It can be operating partner. It could be management team. It could be all 3. So again, this is a highly complex and difficult process to scale. I have so much interest in this that there's going to be a number of individual podcasts addressing business development in our industry, because there really isn't any silver bullet. There isn't a playbook that any firm can just pick up and implement. Office of the CFO consulting firms are still very much a hot commodity. So much so that literally any consulting firm that touches accounting or finance in any way has effectively rebranded themselves as an Office of the CFO consulting firm. Not joking. Do some searches yourself and you will see the number of recruiting firms, staffing firms, restructuring firms, and outsource accounting firms that are now magically rebranded as Office of the CFO consulting firms. It's astounding. New funds with strong teams and a history of success in private equity are not having any problems with fundraising, despite the very macro challenging environment that you have for fundraising in private equity. The volume of A assets is still down, which has resulted in a tremendous amount of competition for these businesses. There's still a number of B and C assets that are out there, and they're just not getting transacted on. Related to this point, we're also seeing larger middle market private equity funds that are going down market and competing for lower middle market assets, A assets in the lower middle market. And so again, a highly challenging and competitive environment to get deals done. AI disruption is real. at least from the perspective of how it is disrupting how investors are looking at and valuing investments in the professional services. A day does not go by where we do not read some article on the impact of AI in consulting, from the largest consulting firms in the world to the smallest. I'm not going to go into that here because the volumes of articles and discussions that are happening right now, and it's very difficult today to separate fact from fiction, from aspiration in what's being put out there. What is crystal clear, though, is that any consulting firm that is looking for institutional capital better have a very firm and understandable answer for how AI is going to impact their business in particular and what they're doing about it. Inorganic growth in consulting is very hard. But if you have or intend to take on institutional capital with the growth requirements come along with that, it's very difficult to not have to do. It's so hard that we've built a separate practice in my own firm in helping professional services firms scale inorganically. But at the same time, for our own strategy and our own growth, we aren't intending to grow inorganically ourselves.
And that's it for this episode of Consulting Uncensored with Neal McNamara. Want to join the conversation? Connect with Neal on LinkedIn to share your thoughts on today's episode and join a community of consulting professionals who want to cut through the BS. Thanks for listening. There's a new episode every other Wednesday. We'll see you then.